And so I feel like when I didn't know how to move forward, I just had to slow down, take care of myself, eat good food, get good rest, associate with good, kind people, and start to try to hear what I'm being told from within. It's like whatever we can do to develop that relationship to the inner voice is paramount to me, because that voice is never wrong. And knowing what's best for us, it already knows. I did not know what would happen when I honored those callings, but that's part of the terrifying part. But it's also exciting. And then when you look back, you're like, okay, I was terrified to follow that voice, but was there anything really bad that happened? And you're like, and how much magic happened? And you're like, oh, of course. The intuition knows. It's so empowering to live knowing that we have this indwelling wise voice that already knows what is for us. And all we need to do is stay in alignment with it and cultivate an ability and listen to it.
Hello, it's your friend and host, Annabelle. Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of To Hum is Human, the podcast where we explore the transformative power of tuning into our intuition to express our passionate purpose. Today, we'll explore one of the most relatable and often overlooked forms of guidance we all possess, our gut feelings. In this episode, The Intuitive Mind, Using Your Gut Feelings to Navigate the World, we unpack how intuition isn't just mystical. It's biological, emotional, and deeply human. We'll learn how to recognize intuitive signals, when to trust them, and how they can help us navigate relationships, career choices, and everyday uncertainty with more clarity and confidence. So, if you've ever had a hunch, a gut check, or a feeling you just couldn't shake, this episode is for you. Joining me is a very special guest, Mark Guglielmo, who brings a grounded, real-world approach to tapping into our inner wisdom. Mark is a contemporary artist known for his layered figurative works that explore race, class, migration, and power. Drawing from his New York upbringing and background in hip-hop, he uses collage techniques like sampling and reconfiguring to create dynamic, socially engaged compositions. Major series include Portraits of My People, which examines Italian heritage and identity in America, and Cuba in Transition, a portrait series blending a personal narrative with geopolitics. His work has been exhibited at institutions including the New York State Museum, the Loveland Museum, and Villa Victoria Center for the Arts. Mark has received awards from the Puffin Foundation and others, and is a former rapper who performed with Eminem and KRS-One under the name Vesuvio. He currently lives and works in Western Massachusetts and serves as a community advisor for Valley Creates with the Community Foundation of Western Massachusetts and Mass MoCA, or the Museum of Contemporary Art. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Well, I had this conversation with you many months ago, and I'm glad we're finally getting to speak about it more with intention today, because your life is something that I find, and you find as well, to be really guided by this inner knowing. So, Mark, your path has spanned music, visual art, and storytelling. Take us back to when you were first starting out in music. What pulled you in that direction?
It's amazing when you're a kid, there's like you have this antenna for what's alive. So when I was in high school, I was looking for something with meaning. I needed something I really cared about, something that spoke to me. And the first time I heard hip hop growing up in New York in the 80s and the 70s, the second I heard it, I was like, that's for me. And it was as if I had found my language. And then once I started writing my own rhymes, which happened pretty quickly, there was nothing I loved more than it. I was into sports at the time, as a lot of kids are, and I love sports. So I was playing all sports, but there was a place that I was expressing myself through hip hop that it felt like pure magic to me. And, depending on how you grew up, life can be challenging. And for me, I really needed a place where not only I could imagine, but I could imagine myself doing these special things, like the artists in the posters on my walls as a teenager. I could see myself, like I could dream myself becoming one of them and speaking that powerfully and making music that felt that powerful. And it was a no-brainer for me. I went to college and I majored in history. I was from a working class Italian American family in New York. We had no professional artists. Everybody was a blue collar worker. Um, I knew I couldn't become a plumber. My uncle was like, "Yo, you take this test and you could be a firefighter. You'll have a pension and everything. You'll be set." You know, it's like it was his great choice to do that, and he was being kind to me and telling me that my grandfather had told him to do that, so I should really consider that because that's like a way to make a living for you and your family for the rest of your life. I knew that I had to follow my gut, right? And my gut was like, "You're a rapper. You're a producer. You want to play with magic." You know, growing up, people always telling you like follow your dreams. But how many of the people who are telling you that actually followed their dreams?
Mm,
It's like a cliche that we throw out there,
mhm,
but I was like, okay, I'm gonna put this to the test, right? Because the last thing I'm gonna do is work some job I hate. And something I learned early on was if you're going to get good at the thing that you love, you got to spend the time. And how are you going to get good, like world class good, even, or even improving incrementally small ways in something that you care about if you don't have the hours per week and the bandwidth?
mhm,
So, like, you work in some 40-hour job, whether it's blue collar or not, you're
mhm,
exhausted afterwards, let alone family and life stuff.
mhm,
So I was like, you know what? I'm going to work some side job, be able to pay the bills. I started as a making sandwiches in a deli,
mhm.
you know, and the dude making the sandwiches right next to me was the bass player for a group signed to Rough House Columbia. So I
Wow.
was like, he was like making the sandwiches, but he was nasty on the bass. I was there when he got signed with the group. He was playing with a bunch of groups. So I was like, oh, okay, yeah. As long as I keep my bills paid
Mhm.
and live on my own with roommates. We had a studio in one of the rooms. I was like, I'm gonna see where this takes me. And that's taken me till now. I'm still
Mm,
doing the same thing,
mm.
making sure the bills are paid and following my gut.
Well, I imagine hip hop is a genre which really requires thinking and being in the moment. And just even you speaking about it, I could see your body moving and it sort of gets expressed throughout your whole being when you speak about it. Can you describe what it was like creating music at that time?
Yeah, I mean, it was quite a journey. I mean, you know, being like Italian American, so kind of perceived as this white dude from the suburbs at the time, family in the city, so in the city regularly, relating to the messages coming to me from these other working class black and brown kids. Like they were like capturing something inside me that I didn't see reflected in this classic rock. And, you know, like I love Led Zeppelin, I love jazz, and I love Joni Mitchell, and I love music from all over the world, you know? But there was something at that time about hip hop that I felt like I was living in a bit of a twilight zone growing up because I had been through all these things as a kid, watching my mother pass away, really struggling as a kid with a single parent father who was like in great crisis. And I felt like there was like it was kind of like that Charlie Brown teacher. Like the adults in my world were narrating an existence that wasn't what I was experiencing, you know,
Mm,
and so I couldn't sugarcoat things on the inside. And so the hip hop to me got at the truth of the real human experience from the worst to the best. It was a manifestation of the magic that we're capable of creating
mm,
from deep misery, right? You got these communities in the ghettos in New York talking about all the difficult things in life, but also all the beautiful things in life. So there was this full representation of our capacity that I wasn't seeing elsewhere in my life, except for at my grandmother's house. You know, so at my grandmother's house, things were real there. You know, my grandmother didn't sugarcoat things. She told it like it was. And that's why when I went to her house, I felt like, yeah, this is a place where I can be myself. Everybody's welcome. And to start to even just, I remember when I made my first demo in my little tiny bedroom with my friend from high school. He had some beat he laid down. It was actually a remake of Cocaine by Eric Clapton because we had a couple of friends in high school who had experimented with some drugs and we thought like, damn, that's like the wrong way to go. Like I remember going to a soccer game and two of our friends were like on ecstasy for like 8 hours or something. And we're like ready to play this soccer game and they're high. And we're like, that's crazy. That is not going to lead to good things. And so we made like an anti-drug song for our friends. Listening back to the song with the lyrics we wrote and the beat that my boy made, I heard myself coming out of the speakers the way I heard Karis One and Eric B. and Rakim. Like I was the voice coming out the speaker. And it blew my mind. And I was like, that sounds like a real song. Like that sounds like a real song. Little did I know it would take another like 10 years to get to the point where I could make music at that level, you know, at the professional level.
Mhm.
But as a kid, there was a level of agency that I see children often don't feel a sense of agency over their own voice and over their own lives. And for me, hip hop gave that to me.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a visceral way of expression. Think about hip hop. First of all, you just get in the beat and then your body starts moving and the words just become part of you. The words that are being expressed fill you up. And when you're the one creating that music, I imagine that's such a powerful transformation happening within you that is just flowing. It's not something that you can sort of orchestrate in any way. You're in it, you feel it, you are it. And that's such a powerful moment of
Yeah.
creation. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what was it like to collaborate with Eminem and KRS-One? That must have been mind blowing.
Yeah, you know, it's like I feel like the beauty of it is that when you're creating in that way, when you're honoring the gut feeling inside you, like this is who I am, this is what I'm going to do with my life. And you're doing that and you're doing that over periods of time, years, and you're developing in your craft. When you meet other people who made that same life choice, you're brothers and sisters on the path. And so every time I collaborated with somebody, it was like there's a hip hop saying, "Real recognizes real," and like you know, all I needed to do was like, well, for instance, with M, um, I had met his manager at the time on the Venice Boardwalk when I was out peddling my work, trying to get my work out there. I just quit a restaurant job, like my 10th restaurant job. I'd had enough. They were really disrespectful to me, and I was like, enough of this. I'm just gonna gamble it all. I had a Discover card from college that I maxed out with paying rent through cash advances that took me years to pay off. But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do this. And one of the things I did was to challenge myself to like really step outside my comfort zone. So I went down to the Venice Boardwalk with a little folding table. I set up a box and I started playing my music. And I was down there for like a good 3 to 5 hours a day. And anybody who knows Venice Beach knows that that's like a crossroads of the world. It's like the Times Square of the West Coast, you know. And so I met tons of people who walk by from crackheads to Eminem's manager.
Wow.
And when he came to the booth, what was funny was he was like, "What's this music you're playing? I like it." And I was like, "It's my group," you know. And he started looking at our materials, and he's like, "I think I know this group." I was like, "Really?" Because we were underground at the time. And he said, "Yeah, yeah, you sent me a package recently." And I was like, "Huh?" And he was like, "Yeah." And then I realized, oh my God, yeah, I was doing like publicity on the side, and this guy had an underground magazine, hip hop magazine in Detroit, and I had mailed him a package trying to get press coverage. So he was like, "Yeah, I like that. And we're going to do a review of it." He's like, "You should work with this artist that I'm managing." And I was like, "Well, let me just listen to his stuff." So he mailed me a cassette. This is pre internet, 90, this is 97. He mailed me a cassette and I listened to it. And like, you know, a lot of people want to collaborate when you're doing things, but it's a matter of, is there an alignment in kind of level of work and vision? And so I sat with the cassette. I listened to M at the time. It was his Infinite record before the Slim Shady, and some freestyle performances of battles. And I was like, this dude is nasty. And I called the dude. I was like, hook it up. And so, you know, when M came out, you know, you got to be ready for the collaboration. In this case, he came to my house. We had a studio. I had a studio in my small bungalow in Venice, and we
Wow.
were ready. We had picked out. I was in a group with three other dudes. We had picked out a few beats that we felt like were strong enough to be on a record, and we had, for one of the beats, we had a concept. And so he ended up picking one of the beats. We had never written to it, but we had this song that we had already written, and we were like, "Yo, this is a concept. What do you think?" He loved the concept, and he spent a couple of hours He was there with Paul Rosenberg, his still manager, and we made the song together in a matter of about 3 hours. I had written my verse already. We had written the hook, me and my boy Abel. And M wrote the intro and he wrote his verse. And we mixed it after he left. And it ended up going top 9 in the country on the rap charts.
Incredible.
Yeah. And it was Dre blocked the video. We were going to film a video. And by the time when we met M, he was homeless. He had been evicted from his house and he was out there shopping tapes trying to get on. He had no money. He really wanted to win this battle he was out there to do. But we were hustlers like him. You know, you go to LA and you're a rapper, people don't care. They're like, whatever, dude. I'm an actor. I'm a rapper. It's like, who cares? You're not famous, you know? And so you got to have this belief so deep inside you, because on the one side, you got the industry saying, we don't care. And on the other side, you got the crowds who are in LA. They're just like, they don't care either. You're not famous. You're not Kardashian. I don't care who you are. So you got to stand and deliver, and you got to have your work speak for you. And, you know, booed at shows, 2,000 people, like, we had to walk through that stuff, and it just gives you a sense of like, why am I doing this? And I used to have nights when I got home after shows and I'd be like, sometimes crying with my homie, another white dude. It was just so hard. But then you're like, why are we doing this? Do we still want to do this? And that's where the gut comes in. Because like all rational thinking people would be like, that's a horrible idea. That's a horrible life decision, career decision, financial decision. And then you're like, there's a voice inside that's like, no, we're not done with this. We are not done with this. And you see it over and over in the world, like people getting up and accepting Oscars and Grammys. I didn't accept an Oscar and a Grammy yet, but I know that you don't get to that place unless you face those kind of demons that are trying to talk you out of it. Like the mind will think of all kind of crazy stuff. And if it comes back to some core root gut, you still got more to do here. Until that was over at a certain point that I went down deep inside. It was like, you know what? You've said everything you need to say in music. Like, yo, visual art. You've had this visual artist inside you, and that's been taking a back seat. Now it's time for your visual artist to shine.
It's fascinating how you talk about the tests that really come into your life to help you question, well, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Like, is this the thing? Right. And you get to a certain point where, yeah, I think I've run this course to a certain point, but you know, you had the notion that, wait, there's more. And I think that's sort of the driving force behind a lot of work and understanding what your gut is, because essentially your gut is you. That's sort of your soul saying, wait, you've got a purpose here, and that's part of it, but there's more. So how do you describe your creative evolution from hip hop to collage? And basically, is it the instinct and process that leads you to whatever medium you decide to choose?
Yeah, I feel like the older I get, the more fluent I get in interpreting my gut messages. Um, you know, I was 28 when I started to study with a mentor who was versed in how to connect with the body as a source of the greatest wisdom and knowledge and understanding. The intuition, right? We talk about the gut, that's in the body. So if we're not connected to the gut, we won't get the messages, you know? And I feel like that's part of the issue that we face in this world. I see people walking around the earth that are just completely disconnected from gut, from body. And you know they're operating from some source, but it seems very shallow. It seems the mind gone astray. And so for me, whenever I have a strong mind. It's just kind of like one of the things I was given. My dad was a math professor. We have strong minds. So that's a plus and a minus, right? Because it can definitely take us down the wrong road where we're too intellect driven. And for me, especially with art, with music, but with life, I want to feel grounded and centered and good in my body. And that has to do with listening, right? And, you know, even to this very day, and especially these days, decisions large and small, I will not have an answer here. I will say, you know what? Give me a moment. I'm just going to check in. And I check in into my body. I breathe into my body. I sit in my body and I say, should I do X, or is this in my highest good? Should I be doing this? which direction should I go? This way, that way? And I'll get an answer. And it's important for me, if I'm doing the things I know I need to do to stay grounded, the answers are quick and clear. But I remember when I was younger, I would ask those questions and I would hear all kinds of voices because I could not distinguish between my intellect and my gut.
Mm.
I've learned the hard way, like most people. We have to learn what doesn't work before we are willing to do the hard work of growth. Like, growth is not easy. Like, someone can tell you that's the way to go. But, we're human. We want to find, is that really the way to go? Like, or I want to be X professional rapper. That was my thing in the beginning. But am I willing to do the things that it takes to become a great professional rapper? That's the question, and that's the challenge.
Mhm.
And a lot of people don't think that way, because once you ask to do something, well, you're going to get the hardest things that it takes to do that thing.
Mhm.
And most people, they don't want to deal with it.
It's true. Life really is about what are the questions you put into play. And the deeper the questions, the deeper you'll go, whatever that looks like. Going to your artwork now, your collage work draws on themes like race, identity, migration, and history. How does your intuition guide you in navigating complex or deeply personal material?
I mean, like, for me, it came down to, once I kind of zeroed in on the fact that I wanted to, for the first time, portray my own culture, I was sitting with, well, how would I do that? What would that look like? Would I start with photo references? And I did. I ended up looking through, it just brought me great joy to look through archival photos of the first generation that arrived in New York and in the US from Italy. I even looked at lots of photos from the generation before they had left, the working class Southern Italians over there. So I could see, okay, this is what we were dealing with. I read history books. I was like, I really want to understand on a deeper level what was going on in the world at that time, what was maybe going on in the minds of people, to try to understand the context of my own ancestors. And then once I kind of was like collecting a body of photographs that felt like great reference material, looking through them, seeing which ones on an emotional level were like grabbing me and saying, you gotta make this into a painting. Which are the loudest ones? Then I would filter those to the top, and then I print them out on an 8.5 by 11. I'd look at them and I'd be like, okay, this is the photo. I don't want to make a photo. I want to make a new work of art that exists beyond what a camera can do. And from the past, how do I reinvigorate this? How do I bring new life to it? And so some of it is the technical aspect of knowing what tools are at my disposal. I can paint, I can draw, I can collage, I can do photo transfers, I can use fabric, I can use metal. And I know I've experimented enough so that I can use these different media. But then it becomes an experiment. I start to put together the first piece. I remember I started to put it together, and I knew I wanted it to pop. Like, the way the beat hits when it comes out of the speaker, and when the MC gets on it, it's gotta hit. When it drives by and it's pumping on the system, you gotta feel it in your chest. So the
Mhm.
bass has to smack and the snare has to smack, and the arrangement of the sounds has to create an energy and a rhythm that excites and enlivens you and takes you to a new place. And so I was like, I need to do that. And I think sonically, visually, I'm trying to do the same thing. I want the piece to jump off the wall. I wanted to, someone scanning, even if you're in Grand Central Station and there was an image on the wall, there's 1,000 people running every direction. I want someone to be able to glance over, see a portrait and be like, damn, what's that? And so in putting together that first piece, I was like, how do I use color? How do I use texture? How do I use layers and levels? And the actual process of putting it together, I'll try a color, I'll try an element, and it's my gut that's like, nope. It's my eye that's connected to my gut that is
Mm.
constantly feeding me yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And it's funny because I have the photos of the early versions of all the pieces and all the different stages.
Really?
Yeah, and so when I look at the finished piece, it's all the yeses.
Mm.
The no's
Mm.
are gone,
Hmm.
and people have told me like, "How did you do this?" And look at this and look at that. I'm just like, I'm glad you love it. It works for me. If other people aren't feeling it, that's okay. But as long as it represents how I feel and it gets my stamp of approval, that's all that I'm looking for, and that I arrive at through my intuition.
Now, I want to go back to where I first met you was your Cuba in transition period. And when people think of collage, it could sometimes be chaotic, but also beautifully layered. And in a way, it's really a visual form of your lyrical vocal form. How did you come up with the idea of taking portraits of people in Cuba and creating these stories through these photographs in a very multi-level, multi-layered way?
That's funny because so the first time I went to Cuba was in 2015, and I had started dancing salsa in 2011. And in 2015, in like February or something, one of the salseras, Marisa Lucero, who's Cuban American, decided she wanted to organize a trip of dancers to go down to Santiago de Cuba, where she was born, for like, 10 days of lessons in the day, exploring Cuba, going out dancing and listening to music at night. And at first I was like, I don't have 2 G's to spend on that. I had never spent like that kind of money on a trip like that. So I was like, I'm not doing it. And then one night we were driving back from an event, and one of the dancers was like, "Are you going to Cuba?" And I was like, "No." And then I heard myself. I was like, why aren't you going? You got 2 G's in the bank. It might make things a little tight for a while, but you got to go. My intuition was like, you got to go. So against my rational mind, I went, and I had the most life-changing experience, right? And so the day before our last day, so it's our second to last day, I'm lying in my bed taking a break because the sun is hot, and I'm lying in bed, and I'm sort of just breathing, and I'm getting this overwhelming feeling is coming over my body, and it's like I was processing the magnitude of the experience that I had in Cuba, because the people were just so loving to me, and it was such a magical, organic experience on a personal level. I didn't make any art. I was just there as a human being.
Mm.
The conversations I was having with Cubans, the way I was able to connect with them on a real human level, the way they welcomed me as one of their own, were things that I hadn't experienced since I was in my grandmother's house. And I had this such a profound feeling in my body of like internalizing all this. And I was like, wow. And my intuition was like, you need to share this with the world. And I was like, what? What do you mean share this with the world? So I was having this conversation with my intuition. And I'm like, I'm exhausted. I'm lying in bed. And it's like, yeah, you need to share this with the world. This magic that you're feeling, that you've experienced down here, you need to share this. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to share this, how would I share it? And I was like, well, it's the people. So I would do portraits. And I would want people in the US to understand and know how amazing, lovely, kind, and loving these people are, and their culture is, and their country is. I'm not talking politically. And I said, okay, then if I was going to do them right, I would do life-size photo collage portraits. I had already done photo collages in like nature, and I hadn't really gotten into portraiture yet. And I was like, and I would do interviews in Spanish so that people could hear their voices and hear their accent and hear what is important to them. So there's no intermediary other than me. There's no government, nonprofit, business. There's nothing but me and my art, and I'm going to try to bring them to Americans in the world.
Your
Try to,
bridge.
yeah,
You're like a
a bridge,
bridge.
act as
Mhm.
a bridge. And so then I was like, okay, that's what I would do. And I said to my intuition, I was like, listen, if I'm going to do this, you're going to have to help me, and help me a lot. And who is going to help me do this? And immediately popped into my head was one of my best Cuban friend that I had met down there. And my intuition was like, call him, tell him what you want to do. And I only had one day. It was the next day. So I called him after that, and he was like, yes, come over tomorrow. I'll meet you, and I'll take you to my neighborhood, and I'll introduce you to people that you can take portraits of. And that's how it started. After that, I went back twice more, and I spoke enough Spanish. So I introduced myself to people, and I made all the connections. But that's how it got started. And it was all intuitive.
That was no coincidence. I always feel like there are no coincidences in life. It's just a matter of you being open and receptive to hear and be present when those opportunities arise. And wow, what a moment for you. I'm trying to visualize you in this like hot, sweaty space, just kind of like, I am tapped. What am I doing here? But then something surges within you and it just takes you to this other place. And then you just become this font of creation. Because I've seen that whole series. They're huge, number one. They're like wall size, some of them. And it's almost like these collages become a portal into a place where these people are. And you get sort of a sense of being there with them. And then the parts of what's behind them or around them gives you that essence of that place. And it's quite beautiful. I would sit in front of those collages sometimes and I'm transported. I'm absolutely transported. And then I can kind of sense the person in a way that I wouldn't normally if it was just a straight on photograph printed on one sheet or whatever. But the fact that these collages of building up to that person stacked in ways and dimensions, it's kind of a trippy scene because it's not one perspective. You've got like
Yeah.
multi
Well, that's
perspectives going on.
That's the whole thing, you know, it's like intention and intuition go hand in hand for me.
Mm,
And so the
mhm,
intention was for people who have and have not been to Cuba, people who may never get to go, and people who go there and love it. Cubanos. I had some of the people who loved that exhibit the most were Cubans
mm,
who were in the US now, who couldn't go back or hadn't been back, who were far from their home, who are making a home here now and finally could see their soul, their country, their people represented with love and dynamic and real. And above everything else, I wanted to try to bring those people here for people to witness and feel. And that was the intention. I'm so happy to hear that that's what you were getting out of it.
absolutely. I mean, you couldn't help but be there because of the scale of it. You know, you're like, life size is life size. You're putting a portal in front of us in a way. Now I'd like to fast forward because you're telling stories of Cubanos, right? But now in your current work, which is implementing photography to some degree, but now you're incorporating other materials and paint. Now you're telling yours and your family story. How did you get there?
Well, I can locate two things. You know, one was something that a friend of mine said to me at the after party for the Cuban transition opening, Heshima Moya, who's Italian and Puerto Rican. He played conga at the opening. He's very connected to his Latino culture and to his Italian culture because he was raised by his Italian mother. And he said to me, you know what? This whole series, this is going to take you back to your own roots. And I was like, what? But then even in the artist statement that I put in the exhibition, I had written that this is how it felt at my grandma's house. So I was already making that connection that the human connection there was the same human connection, that unconditional love was what I experienced in my grandmother's house. So there was that connection that had been made. And then there was a connection of this intuitive gut voice inside me saying, you're a painter. You're a painter. You know, I finished that Cuba exhibit. I had gotten a level of realization that I had not experienced since the early hip hop days. It had been some time and it felt so good. I wasn't ready to let it go, but it was dead. It was done. It was like, no, we're done making that. Let's move on to the next series. But before you move on to the next series, you got to sit in the emptiness for a while and not make nothing, just be a human being. So that was a really hard transition. And my mentor taught me about that. You need to sit in the unknown. You need to make friends with the unknown, and you need to allow the soil to become fertile again for a seed to land and grow. And so it was in this fallow period where I started getting these messages. You're a painter. Hello, knock, knock, knock. And I'm like, I'm not a freaking painter. I don't even know how to draw. You know, I'm doing these stick figures I've been doing since I was a kid. I never went to art school. I'm not a painter. Thank you for your message. See you later. And then, you know, 2 days later, knock, knock, knock. You're a painter. You know, so it was finally through Katie Schneider helping me to start painting.
I love Katie.
I know Katie's amazing. She was getting together with me and looking at my drawings just out of the kindness of her soul on her off time. You know, mother of two, a full-time teacher, artist, professor. She's a professor of art at Smith, full-time mother and full-time artist with a big time career. She's taking free time out of her schedule to come give me feedback on my drawings. And then I was like, I think I'd like to start painting. And she gave me the list of ingredients I would need, you know, for her intro to painting class. She's like, just buy this stuff and start painting. So I bought the stuff, but I didn't know what to do with it. And I felt too intimidated to start. So after the stuff sat on my desk for weeks, I called her and was like, look, would you be willing to come over and just show me a little demo real quick? She came over and spent about 2 hours with me and just showed me how to block in some shapes and then refine after there. And from that, I was off and running. So these new series of portraits are using reference photos for compositional and subject matter,
Mm.
but they're a painter who's interpreting a reference photo. So without having do- really embraced the very difficult journey, as you know, of learning how to paint, which is one of the most humbling, difficult things a human being can do, this whole body of work would not have come to be.
Well, it seems like you always like to put yourself up to a challenge. That's what I love about you. You're like, I'm really not, but all right. If it's knocking on my door hard enough, I'm just going to have to try it. And trusting that and saying yes to that, where most people will be like, nah, forget it. I'm not going to go there. And then they just continue on. Look where it's taken you. I mean, and interestingly, was the portrait of your grandmother the first portrait that you did in
No, it
painting?
was the one in the middle of the mother and the child.
Okay.
Grandma came later. She might have been eighth or ninth.
Perhaps, okay, I'm getting a sense that perhaps you felt like you needed to refine your skills first before you went to do a proper
Completely,
portrait of your grandmother with the
completely.
reverence and honor that you wanted to give her. And I saw it. When I saw that portrait, I'm like, wow, yeah, yeah. It says it all. It just
Uh,
says it all and has such an amazing energy to it. But anyway, this journey is taking you so many ways into so many parts of yourself and trusting that there's something to learn from this experience. In your opinion, what's the relationship between authenticity and following your intuition? Can one exist without the other?
no, no. I feel like the intuition is the authentic us, the authentic self expressing itself to us. That's part of, I feel like, the issue that humanity really faces, the crisis. We can point to the effects of the crisis in terms of what's going on in the world. But to me, the crisis is an inner crisis about what's your compass? Is it love? Is it authenticity? Is it getting better at listening to my intuition? It's who is guiding you. Are you a follower of some twisted belief system that was passed down and then Xeroxed a million times and then became, it's like that little, that practice where you say like, I am blue. And then I am blue. And then I am blue. I am blue. I'm red, blue, and purple eating, whatever. It changes so much. Like,
It's like
that's the
telephone.
thing. Yeah, telephone. It's telephone over thousands and thousands of years. But that's what's so powerful about intuition. There's no intermediary. It's just we are an intermediary for our intuition. That is in, it abides within. And I feel like that's part of the issue that humans face is they don't realize what we are and what we have within. I mean, you hear these spiritual little, you have everything you need or look within. It took me a very long time and finding a good teacher to help us realize our own authenticity. For me, it was crucial because I needed someone who, like Katie Schneider with painting and with the hip hop artists that I listened to and the people I collaborated with closely to improve my skills in terms of how to live. That's a science. And some people are really good at it, and some people are not. Very few are good at it. And I was blessed to find someone who was great at it, had these tools sharp, and could teach me how to sharpen my own tools.
Mm, mm.
But I do feel like those are tied. Authenticity and intuition, they're very tied.
You're uncovering your true self, right?
Exactly.
If someone's listening who is feeling disconnected from their inner guidance, their inner wisdom, what's one way they can begin to rebuild that trust today?
I would say take a little break from the screens.
Mm,
Find a little, you just need a moment. You just need a few minutes. You can close your eyes. You don't have to close your eyes. And if you just focus on your breath, maybe there's birds outside you're listening to. If you're in nature, if you're not, you're in the city, you find a little corner and you just breathe in your body. And just, I feel like that breath is a doorway to the inner cosmos, and I feel like it's such a seductive allure, the world and all that it brings, likes and friends and riches and fame. And it's all this, it's none of,
out here.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
all out there. It's all out there. There ain't nothing out there that's not a reflection of what's in here.
Mm.
And so the outer is just a reflection of the inner. And so I feel like when I didn't know how to move forward, I just had to slow down, take care of myself, eat good food, get good rest, associate with good, kind people,
Mm.
and start to try to hear what I'm being told from within. It's like whatever we can do to develop that relationship to the inner voice is paramount to me, because that voice is never wrong.
And it comes from love and wanting the best for you, I feel like your best self.
And knowing what's best for us. It already knows. I did not know what would happen when I honored those callings. But that's part of the terrifying part, but it's also exciting. And then when you look back, you're like, okay, I was terrified to follow that voice, but was there anything really bad that happened? And you're like, and how much magic happened? And you're like, oh, of course. The intuition knows.
It's so
It's
true.
so empowering to live knowing that we have this indwelling wise voice that already knows what is for us. And all we need to do is stay in alignment with it and cultivate an ability to hear and listen to it.
So true. So powerful. Wow. Mark, how do people connect with you? Because you're up to so many amazing things. Where do they find out what you're up to?
Well, you can always go to my website, markguglielmo.com. That's MarkGuglielmo.com. And then Mark Guglielmo, same thing, at Mark Guglielmo on Instagram. Those are two places.
Well, I feel like you're all over the place, so they can't not find you doing incredible, amazing things. Mark Guglielmo, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of To Hum is Human today. I hope this conversation with Mark helped you reconnect with a quiet wisdom that already lives inside you. That gut instinct, that creative spark, that subtle nudge pulling you in the direction of alignment. If today's episode resonated with you, take a moment to reflect on where intuition might already be speaking in your life. And maybe it's a decision you've been sitting with, a connection that needs tending, or a creative project waiting to come through. Thank you so much, Mark, for joining me today.
Thank you. This was fun.
Thanks for being here. I hope something from today's conversation stayed with you or gave you a new way to look at things. That awareness, that pause, that's where things start to shift. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who might need it. You can learn more about my work and what's coming up at sonorouslight.com, and you can follow me on Instagram at To Hum is Human. Until next time, keep humming.